Good evening everyone, welcome to today's study circle on the topic SEZ, and STPI as effective business vehicles. Before we proceed with it, there are a few announcements to be made. One is about the program which is Guruprasad happening on 21st September, Saturday, that is in Manchester, in this hall, on Search, Survey and Settlement Commission. Please do get registered. It has 6 hours of CPE credit with it. Prominent speakers Prashant G. Pradeep and Ramsubramanian sir are coming on to the event. And another program which is happening on October 5th, which is on Sabka Vishwas scheme 2019, is happening on October 5th, Saturday, in the same auditorium. It has 3 years of CPE credit. And prominent speakers like Sai Prasad and Advocate Naveen Kumar and Jatin Krishna sir is coming here. So before we proceed, let's welcome today's speaker who is among us, the CA Guruprasad ji. I request Chairman Shriram sir to accompany the guest and welcome with the floral bouquet. Please give a big round of applause. Short brief introduction of today's speaker. CA Guruprasad ji is a member of our institute and a principal with Dhruva Advisors with over 10 years of experience in the field of indirect taxation, advisory and structuring. His experience involves a wide range of expert, advisory, compliance, litigation, representation and diagnostic review services to public and privately held companies. Apart from this, he has been a part of various papers. He has presented various papers on indirect taxation with print media like Tax India Online, Tax Management India, and CTC journals. He is also currently engaged in advisory, advising various companies across sectors regarding GST, customs, foreign trade, policy matters, SEZ, and STPI regulations. With this brief introduction, let's welcome today's speaker to take over the session. Thank you, sir.
Good evening all, and I thank the Bangalore branch and the Chairman Mr. Bhatt for giving me an opportunity to share my knowledge on the subject of SEZ and STPA and how we can use this as effective business vehicles. So next 90 minutes or so would be talking around and talking about and sharing a few of the practical aspects and then how to deal with certain scenarios, certain instructions issued under the SEZ and STP laws and how do we incorporate them, and as a practitioners what are the opportunities which would be available in structuring the business, especially with respect to new companies wanting to settle into India. So before we go into this subject, I think a lot of sentiments, a lot of talks have been happening outside about economic slowdown and the auto industry and the real estate sector being the hot topic of the town. So while there could be different sentiments across, in my view, probably we are experiencing a wind of change which is being blown across the nation. And then, as the famous quote says, whenever there is wind of change, pessimist will always complain, an optimist will always be hopeful of the change, and then a realist would adjust his sails. So let us be realist and then let's try and embrace all these changes in a positive manner and see and try and see how best we can utilize these changes to the benefit of our profession. And then another important and positive aspect about the Indian economy is with respect to the firm determination of the government of India. While I am apolitical, but some of the things, especially when the government talks about achieving a $5 trillion economy by 2024-25, and as of today, or rather, I have read a Ministry of Commerce report which says that as of year end of 17-18, 18% of the GDP was contributed by the export sector, and then if we were to achieve a $5 trillion economy by 2024-25, then a steady 8% GDP has to be, growth rate of GDP has to be maintained, and then the expectation is the export sector would contribute to approximately 1 to 1.5 trillion of our total $5 trillion economy by 2024-25. So with this positive aspects and hopes all around, let us try and see how the units in special economic zone or software technology parks of India would benefit the export sector and what are the nitty-gritties of the same. So when we talk of special economic zone, STPI, especially the life cycle of these two forms of organization, I would summarize it as the point of entry, and once you enter, how do you operate within the regulatory framework, and then how do you exit out of the SEZ or STPI, especially after the purpose is being met. So when we talk of an entry point, as a normal human being, as an end consumer, what would excite us to go and grab a product? Let's say, for example, both Amazon and Flipkart are selling the same laptop of Lenovo. So as an end customer, what is that one thing which would entice me to either purchase that laptop on Amazon or purchase that laptop on Flipkart? Pricing. No loyalties towards the brand? Good. So, typical mindset, and I wouldn't blame for that because for anyone to go and grab an offer when the same product is on offer and then there are two sellers selling that, price is definitely the key, one of the most critical factors for entry point. So, in similar fashion, a businessman or a business unit or a business undertaking, for that undertaking to choose the form of an organization, there should be something which is very enticing, or the SOPs should be so attractive that he or she or the organization would choose to go and adopt to that form of an organization. So there have been a lot of tax benefits, both on indirect tax front and on the direct tax front, especially income tax front, with respect to a setting up of an SEZ and its operations and its profits. So once the entry point is through, then the second point in the life cycle would be the operation part. So in the operations part, there are a lot of regulations with respect to the procurement of goods, procurement of services, and then so outward supply of goods and outward supply of services. How are these regulated, at what point in time, or what are the procedures to be followed so that the tax benefits can be availed and it is not later on questioned by the tax authorities. And then once the purpose is met, then how do we come out of these organizations? Because once the tax benefits or the tax SOPs are exhausted, then these forms of organization should not become an onerous thing for the organization. So whenever organization hits that point in time, how do we come out of that, or how do we exit out of these schemes? These are some critical points which are there in the life cycle of SEZ and STPI, which we would look into. And we will be concentrating more on the unit in an SEZ rather than an SEZ developer, because we are looking at an export sector as a unit. So if you look at the legal framework of an SEZ, it is governed by the Special Economic Zones Act of 2005, Special Economic Zone Rules of 2006, and then there are various notifications issued under this act and the instructions. So the key aspect or the critical thing with respect to the administration of a SEZ law are the instructions, because the day-to-day operations may not be covered under the Special Economic Zones Act 2005. It will only give you a broad perspective on what are the exemptions available, so on and so forth. But how do the movement of the goods happen, or procurement of services happen, or if at all there is any clarification required with respect to the day-to-day operations of the unit, all those things are covered under the instructions issued by the Ministry of Commerce. And then one critical section which is noteworthy under the Special Economic Zones Act 2005 is Section 51. So Section 51 provides an overriding effect over any other law for the time being in force to the extent of inconsistencies. So if there are any inconsistencies between any provisions of any other law in India, and with the SEZ law, then the provisions of SEZ law would hold good or would override the other inconsistent provisions of any other law which is effective in India at any given point in time. So with this section, SEZ law has been sort of got a veto power in respect of inconsistencies with respect to other laws. So if you look at the background of SEZ, a special economic zone typically is commonly understood as a delineated duty-free enclave of the units. So when we talk of delineated duty-free enclave, that means effectively no taxes should be incurred by that SEZ unit either on its procurements or on its outward supplies of goods or services, which is the meaning. And then it is also understood as operating in a well-defined area within a geographical boundary of a country. So if at all a company wants to operate out of SEZ unit, they can't convert the existing premises into an SEZ unit. There are dedicated special economic zones within the country which has been notified, and then they have to go and either lease out or buy space within that special economic zone, and then that will be registered. Once the license is approved, then that premises would be called as a unit in a special economic zone. And then once operating in a well-defined area within a geographical boundary of a country, and once you identify the unit and the area, then you can carry on the economic activities within such unit. And even within a unit, there are demarcated areas. One is processing areas and non-processing areas. The processing areas are the one where the core and technical operations do happen, where you are, if you have applied for authorized operations of development of a software, so all the development activity will happen in the processing area, and non-processing area are the other support areas, including the cafeteria premises, so on and so forth. And that particular area will always be subject to a special fiscal and regulatory regime. So sort of special economic zone is sort of a deemed zone or deemed territory outside India, but only to the extent of providing exclusive tax benefits. And then Special Economic Zone Act 2005 and the rules were enacted with the following key objectives, which is generation of additional economic activity and promotion of exports of goods and services, and promotion of investment from domestic and foreign sources, and creation of employment opportunities and development of infrastructure facilities. Now at the beginning, when I told that government is very keen on achieving $5 trillion economy by 24-25, so they have also spelled out in the Economic Survey 2019, which says that how would they intend to achieve this. They want to create an environment where the savings are more, and once the savings are more, the savings will be pooled into an investment, and with those private investments, the export sector will be given shocks to boost the economic activity. And then special economic zone being targeted for the export sector, so all these investments are, the majority of the investments are directed towards such export sectors. So before we go into the actual operations and the entry, certain key definitions under the SEZ Act are noteworthy, which is developer. So who is a developer? Developer, for the purpose of Special Economic Zone Act, means a person who, or a state government which has been granted by the central government a letter of approval under subsection 10 of section 3 and includes an authority and a co-developer. So developer includes a co-developer, and developer is a person who will actually get the permission for setting up a special economic zone. And then co-developer means a person who, or a state government which has been granted by the central government a letter of approval under subsection 12 of section 3. So co-developer assists the developer. A co-developer can be any person who will be providing the infrastructural support services for the development of a special economic zone by the developer. And then entrepreneur. Entrepreneur means a person who has been granted a letter of approval by the development commissioner under subsection 9 of section 15. So effectively, if a company wants to set up a unit, then that will be coming under the category of an entrepreneur. A unit is also referred to as entrepreneur. And then if you can look at the distinction between the approval for the developer and co-developer. For a developer, letter of approval will be given by the central government for establishing the special economic zone. Once the special economic zone is established, within that, creating the units in special economic zone, an approval from the development commissioner would be given to the entrepreneur. And development commissioner effectively is equivalent to the rank of a commissioner under indirect tax enactments, and then he typically controls every aspect of the special economic zone which has been allotted to him. Effectively, he is the CEO of that particular special economic zone. He will go to the extent of giving the approval of number of entry points, exit points in that special economic zone. So everything is regulated once you are under the special economic zone regulations. And then the next key definition is on manufacture. So manufacture means to make, produce, fabricate, assemble, process or bring into existence by hand or by machine a new product having a distinctive name, character or use. So we are all familiar with this having distinctive use, name, character or use since Central Excise Act 1944, which is no longer in force to the extent it was there prior to introduction of GST. And then extending the definition of manufacture, it shall also include such processes of refrigeration, cutting, polishing, blending, repair, remaking, re-engineering, and includes agriculture, aquaculture, animal husbandry, floriculture, horticulture, pisciculture, poultry, sericulture, viticulture and mining. So all these activities are permitted to be carried out in a special economic zone, and then anyone cannot carry out any activity though notified in any special economic zone. There are sector specific special economic zone. So there could be IT/ITES special economic zone, wherein a unit providing only IT/ITES service can go and get a letter of approval in that zone. There could be pharmaceutical special economic zone. There could be an industrial sector economic zone, so on and so forth. Or there could be multi-product economic zone also, where broadbanding of the products is also permitted, wherein multi-sector can come into that economic zone and have a unit in that. Then the most important definition is of the services. So services means such tradable service which are covered under the General Agreement on Tariffs and Services annexed as 1B to the agreement establishing the World Trade Organization concluded in Marrakesh on 15th April 1994. So there has been a list of services which has been provided under this GATT agreement. So only those services, and it is wide enough to cover any and every services what we can think of, and also what we cannot think of. So typically every service is permitted to be carried out in a special economic zone, and in addition to that, the central government may also notify certain services to be carried out within the special economic zone by a unit. And then the third and most important criteria is such provision of services should earn a foreign exchange. Now, a unit established in a IT/ITES special economic zone for export of software. During the course of its operation, that unit got an order from an Indian customer. Can that unit provide the services to that Indian customer or not? So while there are no specific restrictions for a special economic zone to provide the services to domestic market within India, but the criteria is the services should be as per the GATT agreement, and then it should earn foreign exchange. So the condition is, if you look at clause B, at the end it says and. So it is a cumulative condition. So far the Indian customer pays in foreign exchange to the special economic zone, that services would qualify as an authorized services of authorized in nature for that unit in special economic zone. So to put it in a nutshell, there are no restrictions on a unit in special economic zone to render services to Indian or domestic customers. Only condition is to earn foreign exchange. Now another question could come up saying that which Indian customer would actually pay for in foreign exchange, because for him practically special economic zone is also within India. and then whether at all it's a permissible transactions under the FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act. So RBI has issued a specific circular which says that in case of transactions with respect to special economic zone or unit in special economic zone, wherein the requirement is to pay in foreign currency, the such Indian customer can actually approach the AD banker, have the foreign currency exchange for INR and use that foreign currency to pay to the services received from a special economic zone. So all these factors have been provided, and then there was also a proposal that when we, the only criteria for a special economic zone is they have to be net NFE positive, which is net foreign exchange earning should be positive at the cumulative block of end of 5 years. There is no value added criteria specified other than for gems and jewelry sector. Okay, so to the extent they are positive at the end of 5-year period with respect to the foreign exchange, that means gross receipts minus the payments in foreign currency, foreign exchange should be positive. So to the extent they are positive, they are allowed to continue within the special economic zone, otherwise there are certain penal implications on the same. So there is a proposal saying that whether at all the services provided by a special economic zone unit to the Indian customer will qualify as a positive one in that formula. One is the gross receipts minus the payments in foreign exchange for computation of NFE. So A minus B should be plus. Whether it will qualify for that A category of the services or not, while the SEZ rules with respect to the NFE criteria recognizes that also in the A block, but there are certain proposals saying that that should be removed because there is no real value addition, there is no real foreign exchange earned for India as such, because it's only an exchange of an INR with foreign currency which is already available within India. So that is still a proposal stage, but as it stands today, even a domestic supply would qualify for the A block. And then another key definition is export. Export means taking the goods or providing services out of India from a special economic zone by land, sea or air or by any other mode, whether physical or otherwise. Or supplying goods or providing services from a domestic tariff area to a unit or a developer. So that means even an Indian customer or an Indian supplier of goods or services, if he supplies the goods or services to the SEZ unit or SEZ developer, then that would be treated as an export for the purpose of SEZ Act. Now if some other act doesn't recognize that, now fortunately we have GST Act or other IGST Act, where in section 16 of IGST Act categorically says that supplies to SEZ is a zero rated supply. Now pre-GST era, there is no specific mention of supply of services or goods to a unit or a zone, special economic zone as exports. Though there are other criteria which recognize this as a deemed export, but there is no specific thing. But then at that point in time, we again referred back to section 51 of the SEZ Act, which gave overriding powers in the matters of inconsistencies. So any other law or any other act which did not treat these supplies to a special economic zone as export, by virtue of section 51 of SEZ Act, it was deemed to be export, because export as per SEZ Act means even supply from domestic tariff area to the unit or a developer. And then export also means supplying goods or providing services from one unit to another or developer in the same or different special economic zone. So even within a same special economic zone, one unit can supply to another unit, or it can one unit in that zone can supply to a unit outside that zone to any other unit in different special economic zone. So even that is considered as export. And then as we discussed, SEZs can be categorized on the basis of sector, function, location, and required to have processing as well as non-processing area. It can be a multi-product, sector specific, or in a port or airport. And as we discussed, SEZ unit may be established for manufacturing of the products or for rendering of services or for both. Now if we talk of the institutional framework or the constituents or the governing committee from the government side with respect to an SEZ, then these are the ones. The first and foremost being, or the top authority being the board of approval, which will approve the proposals to set up the special economic zones and approve the authorized operations in a special economic zone. So as we talked of, a single special economic zone cannot function, or rather the units in the special economic zone cannot have multi-operations. So what are the authorized operations which are required to be carried out in a particular economic zone is also approved by the Board of Approval. If they permit saying that ITS activities have the approved authorization for this particular special economic zone, all the units in that only has to provide those operations. And then any approvals for infrastructure provision through co-developers also is a part of Board of Approvals permission. And then the second leg of institutional framework are the unit approval committee. So unit approval committee typically approves proposal for establishment of SEZ units. And then the committee, or rather the constituent members of a unit approval committee will be the development commissioner, and there will also be the invitee members from the local DGFT office, the income tax authorities, the GST or the pre-GST authorities, and then the labor from the labor department, so on and so forth. So all the people from various departments would form part of the unit approval committee. And then unit approval committee is also responsible for monitoring the compliance by the SEZ developer and units. So as I told, the only criteria for an SEZ unit is to have a positive NFA at the end of 5-year block period, and unit approval committee will be monitoring whether or not they achieve that criteria. And then if a unit wants to get transferred to another SEZ or so on and so forth, then even the unit approval committee, a prior approval has to be taken. And then the next line of the officer would be the development commissioner. As I told you, he is effectively the chief executive officer of the SEZ. For anything and everything, any query on the operations of the SEZ unit, the development commissioner would be the relevant authority. Of course, he has subordinate officers called as the specified officer and the authorized officers for helping him with respect to the regulations of the SEZ. And the developer and co-developer we have already discussed. Then comes how do we enter into a special economic zone, or what is the process for setting up of a special economic zone unit and the approval process. So first and foremost thing is you need to have a form of organization, be it company, LLP, so on and so forth. And recently even a trust is permitted to operate in a special economic zone. And then the steps would be identify the area within the special economic zone, talk to the developer, identify your space requirements, and then identify a particular unit space within the special economic zone in line with your proposed activity. If you are wanting to have a pharmaceutical sector, then please don't go and ask for a ITS economic zone developer saying that can you have a space, because even he is not authorized to give you the permission. So once the unit space is identified, the next step would be making the application before the development commissioner, and the development commissioner would forward such proposal to the unit approval committee. So a unit or a proposed unit holder will not have direct approach to UAC, it is always through the development commissioner. And then once the UAC approves or rejects the proposal, if it approves with or without modifications, that would be binding on the unit, and if it rejects the proposal, appeal can be filed against such rejection before the Board of Approval. And then Board of Approval, after hearing the applicant would render its final decision based on the merits of the case. So while there are certain minimum area restrictions for setting up a special economic zone, which is 10 hectares of the land should be available at bare minimum for establishing a special economic zone. But for IT/ITES sector, there is a relaxation. If at least 1 lakh square meters of area is available, then an approval is given for establishing a special economic zone. And within that, multiple units can come up, and there is no minimum area requirement for the units in a special economic zone. And then once your proposal is accepted, then the development commissioner would issue a letter of approval to the applicant, and once letter of approval is received, then the unit should carry out the post-approval formalities. So post-approval formalities may include execution of a BLUT, bond cum letter of undertaking. So this effectively is a bond or an undertaking given by the developer, given by the unit to the development commissioner, stating that I hereby undertake to compensate the loss or repay the tax and duty savings whatever I have availed on import of goods in case of any non-compliance of the conditions attached in the letter of approval. So typically a unit has to furnish the bond or annuity for a value of up to 3 months of its import, and then the onus is on the unit to monitor this amount. If at all they furnish a BLUT for 100 crore and the duty savings for 3 months of imports exceeds 100 crore, then they may have to revise that value and furnish that incremental value of BLUT. Otherwise, it will be a non-compliance of the letter of approval. So any non-compliance, the ultimate penalty would be the cancellation of a license or cancellation of letter of approval, which would entail that a unit will not be able to operate from the SEZ unit. And then one more post-approval activity is with respect to obtaining the list of authorized operations. So there have been a list of 66 or rather 67 default list of services which have been notified under the SEZ law, saying that these services can be procured by the SEZ unit for use in their authorized operations. And then anything and everything which is not covered in that default list of services, then a unit has to approach the unit approval committee for having those services specified in the authorized list of operations. Then coming to the tax benefits, so as we told, what are those SOPs which would actually excite a prospective unit holder to go and opt for a SEZ form of organization? The first and foremost would be the income tax holiday. You would see that what income tax benefits are there in detail in the coming slides. However, though there are income tax deductions on the profits, but the minimum alternate tax and the dividend distribution tax is equally applicable for a special economic zone unit. And there are certain indirect tax exemptions and refunds, be it on the customs duty front or be it on the GST front, which we will study in detail. And then the last one is the SEZ incentive. So as we all are aware that with the introduction of foreign trade policy of 1520, there was a scheme of service export from India scheme which was introduced, which would entail an exporter of notified services an incentive of up to 7%. Initially it was between 3 to 5%, and then later on it was increased from 5 to 7% for notified services. So a unit operating in SEZ will also be entitled for claiming this SEIS benefit, unlike a unit operating in STPI. So the foreign trade policy specifically puts STP units under negative list, where though the nature of export is same. A unit operating in SEZ is also exporting software services or other accounting services, so to say, because accounting bookkeeping is one of the covered services under the SEI scheme. And unit operating in STPI also is providing accounting bookkeeping services while ITAS means. But the benefit or advantage of the SEZ unit over STP unit is the SEIS incentives. Then coming to the income tax benefits, what the SEZ unit entails. So income tax exemptions under the Income Tax Act 1961 are subject to certain conditions being satisfied, and deduction under section 10AA of Income Tax Act 1961 is as follows for a SEZ unit, which is first to 5 years of commencement of business or commencement of manufacturing or commencement of operation, 100% of the profits is tax free, and the next block of 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 50% of the profits earned from the SEZ unit, not of the company. If a company is having both SEZ and non-SEZ, so the exemption or the tax-free deductions is only available up to 50% of the profits of the SEZ unit. And then for the last block of 5 years, which is 11 to 15, maximum of 50% of profit subject to certain conditions. So those conditions are the special economic zone unit has to reinvest that amount, that profits, into a special economic zone reinvestment reserve, which has to be utilized within 3 years for in the plant and machinery for expansion of the operations. So if those reinvestment is done, then the last block of 50% is also available. So effectively 15 years tax benefits. And profits of SEZ unit is subject to MAT of around 21.55% approximately. An income tax benefit is available for SEZ unit which commences operations on or before March 21st, 2020. So it's a right time for practitioners to suggest to the client saying that okay, there is a sunset clause on SEZ, and even if they want to avail this tax benefits of up to 15 years, they need to enter into an SEZ, they need to have a SEZ unit, have a letter of approval and commence their business operations before this sunset date. And the possibility of extension, looking at the current economic scenario, quite likely, or it may be in the same form or different form. It's only a matter of time which we can see post March 2020. And there is no minimum export obligation criteria. Only requirement is, as I told, NFE should be positive at the end of 5 years. And local sale of goods or rendering of services are allowed, and subcontracting and job works are also allowed. So SEZ unit will get a big contract from its foreign customer, and they due to lack of capability or they don't want to scale up immediately, then they can subcontract some work to a DTA unit also. That provision is also available under the Special Economic Zones Act. So some of the restrictions under section 10AA, which says that if you are qualifying all this, then you are not entitled for the tax deductions for those 15 years. Let us see what are those. First and foremost, the unit is not formed by splitting up or reconstruction of a business already in existence. So, for example, unit is operating in a domestic tariff area and then exporting in the same example of IT/ITES services. They have two segments. One is into development of software, another is into support and maintenance of software. So they can't shift the existing unit, either one of them, either the development or the one which is rendering into maintenance activity. They can't split or they can't reconstruct and they shift one of their vertical to a special economic zone because that unit is already up and running. So the shift is not permissible. While they will get a letter of approval, they will get a permission to operate as a unit in a special economic zone, but they will not get the income tax benefits. And the second part is, unit is not formed by the transfer to a new business of machinery or a plant previously used for any purpose in excess of 20% of the machinery or plant used in the new business. So that means the only restriction is you can transfer the used capital goods to the SEZ from an existing DTA unit, but such transfer should not exceed 20% of the total value of the plant and machinery at the end of the year, or rather any given point in time, which is existing in that unit in a special economic zone. So just to give you an example or illustration, let us see this, whereas the value of installed capital goods of imported, let's say 20 crore. And please note that the first line is value of installed capital goods imported and used, which is 20 crore, and value of installed capital goods imported and new 100 crore, value of installed capital goods domestic new 40 crores, and value of installed capital goods domestic used capital goods 10 crores, and value of capital goods proposed to be procured, which is used, is 10 crore. Now going by that condition, it should not exceed 20% of the existing value of the capital goods. Now let us take the first example, wherein I will add what is the total of the used capital goods in this table, which is 20 crore of imported goods and then 10 crore of domestic used goods and 10 crore of proposed. So 20, 30, 40. 40 crore is the used goods, and how much is the new goods? 100 crore plus 40. So 40 by 140 is 28.57%. Is it exceeding 20%? It is definitely exceeding 20%, but it is still allowed to be imported, it is still allowed to be procured, and income tax benefits will still remain, for the reason that out of this 40 crore of used goods, that 20 crore pertains to imported used goods. So imported used goods is not a criteria for that computing 20%. So if we remove that imported goods, and if you look at the second column in that observations table, then it will only amount to 12.5%. So imported goods would also be equated to the used goods category. So the new formula would be 20 crore of imported goods plus 100 plus 40. So 160, and then 10 used and 10 proposed. So 20 by 160, which is only 12.5%. Accordingly, even in this scenario, that goods are allowed to be procured by the SEZ unit. And then second restrictions is with respect to the movement of the employees from the existing unit to the SEZ unit. So while SEZ law does not restrict any movement of the employees from the existing unit, but as per the CBDT circular 14 of 2014, it mandates satisfaction of either of the two conditions to claim the income tax benefits. The first one is transfer or deployment of manpower from the existing unit to the new unit to the extent of 50% of the total technical manpower. Technical manpower actually engaged in the new unit would not be constituted as splitting up or reconstruction of existing business. And second condition is net addition of new technical manpower in all the units of the SSEs is at least equal to 50% of the total manpower of the technical manpower of the new unit. So let us understand this by way of an illustration. So there is an existing SEZ unit. Now he wants to bring into a new SEZ unit. So number of employees as at the beginning of the year. Now that 50% criteria whatever we talked should be satisfied at the end of the year, end of the first year. So number of employees as at the beginning, let's say 10,000 in the existing unit. Number of employees transferred from existing unit to a new unit. So negative 1,000 in the existing unit, positive 1,000 in the new unit. And then net additions of new employees during the year is 500 in the existing unit and 100 in the new unit. So total number of the employees at the end of the year is 9,500 in the existing unit, which is 10 minus 1 plus 500, and in the existing unit 1000 plus 100. 1100 is the total number of employees as at the end of the year. Now let us superimpose those conditions on this illustration. The first condition is percentage of employees transferred to the new unit, which is in the given formula 1000 by 1100, which is 90.9%. So given that percentage of employees transferred to the new unit exceeds 50%, the manpower engaged in the new SEZ unit, this requirement is not satisfied because it should not exceed 50% for claiming income tax benefits. So absolutely no doubt on operations, no doubt on approvals, but to claim the income tax benefit, these are the conditions. So since the transfer exceeds 50%, here in this case the unit will not get income tax benefits. Now second, but that condition is either the first condition or the second condition. So unit is satisfied either one of them. Now first I am not satisfying. Now let us look at the second condition, which is increase in employees as a percentage of total number of technical manpower in a SEZ unit. So which will be 600 by 1100. So D plus add D plus E, which is total new employees during the year, which is 600 you added, and divided by G, divided by the total number of employees in the new SEZ unit as at the end of the year. So you have recruited more than 50% of new staff during the year out of the total employees of that new SEZ unit at the year end. So since it's exceeding 50%, then you are eligible to claim income tax benefits as per section 10. Clear? Any questions so far? On the 20% criteria? One second, could you please pass on the mic?
So example, we have like desktop, laptops we'll be having. So those will be imported, and again we'll be having furniture also. So so in this criteria, so whatever the furniture that we have procured DTA, so you mean to say that will not be considered as imported.
So if I understand your question rightly, you are talking of imported laptops and domestically procured furniture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So are these used, especially with respect to the furniture, are these used furniture or newly procured furniture?
So we have the company where I am working now, they have a STPI unit as of now, okay. And slowly they will be moving to SEZ unit. So eventually we have to shift all the assets to SEZ unit. So when we have to calculate this thing, these calculations, so that.
So your case of the furniture will be used furniture. It
Yeah.
will fall in the criteria of E.
Okay.
E in this table.
Okay.
So which will be considered for the computation of 20%. So E plus D, already whatever used furniture existing in the SEZ unit, plus this proposed movement from STP to SEZ unit,
Yeah.
including this furniture, will be considered that divided by already existing goods in that SEZ unit.
Okay. So example, desktops and laptops we will import it. So that will not consider.
It will be falling under A. So that will not be considered.
Oh. Okay.
So anything imported, even if it is used laptops, will not be considered for 20% computation.
Oh. Okay.
But
So
used computers and laptops procured domestically will be considered for the 20% computation.
Oh. Yeah. Understood.
Clear? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
The group services that you mentioned, right? So this is just I worked in coffee before, and I was working at the sales of the vending machines, right? So what had happened was they said that these vending machines, when we were collecting money from, we were not charging IGST then. But later on they got a ruling, and this advance ruling saying that you have to charge IGST. And what they said was that approved services, these do not contribute in any manner to the economic activity of that particular SEZ, which is why IGST is applicable on such services. So I just wanted your clarification on what are these approved services exactly, should they be contributing to the activity of an SEZ, what they're performing in the particular SEZ unit?
In fact, very good question, and the most hot topic of debate, especially after post-introduction of GST Act, wherein Section 16 of IGST Act specifically says that, or rather categorically says that any supplies made to an SEZ unit or SEZ developer are zero rated supplies. Okay, and there is no inconsistency between SEZ Act, because SEZ Act also says that an SEZ unit can procure be it domestic or imported goods without payment of duties, so on and so forth. So in my view, a position can still be taken saying that both are consistent, and the language is very clear and embedded in the Act itself, saying that the supply should not be taxed. Accordingly, this supplies made to the SEZ unit should not be taxed. But only one, probably the point of litigation here is, again, you touched upon the point of whether it should be ensured that it is actually directly contributing to the services provided by the SEZ unit. Plain simple reading of both the acts, nowhere it talks of saying it is directly contributing, indirectly contributing, and then all these are subject matter of interpretation. Even in the service tax regime, especially with respect to service tax refunds, Rule 5 refunds, there was always a requirement of furnishing an excess statement, saying how any particular input service is attributable to an output services. Then lot of deliberations happened, and then ultimately in 2010 the government of India came up with a circular saying that if the absence of such input service affects the quality of delivery of the output service, then it is to be assumed that it has a nexus with the output services. Okay. By virtue of that, they were allowing certain category of services as a refund. But then there were same category of services of coffee vending machines and then event management services, so on and so forth. While there are no specific, most of the judgments are against with respect to the coffee vending machines, but with the advent of GST law, I think it is still worth taking a chance of not charging GST. Or if you are risk averse, then claim GST, or rather charge GST and then apply for a refund. So that at least you will be avoiding any interest implications. Because this is not a settled matter as of today in GST laws, but this is one approach which I would recommend. Have I answered your question now? Thank you.
How do you define the installed capital goods used?
Could you pass on the mic, sir?
That same slide. Could you please help me define that value of installed capital goods used? How is it? from the new one?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
No, I want you to clarify, the value of installed capital goods, imported, used. How is it different from the new one? Because I thought used means which we already imported and currently being used in the existing, say, the example of SEZ unit. Are we referring to those assets? Or are we going to import the used assets which are used by somebody else outside of India?
So with respect to the imported used goods, it means it is used by someone else. You are not the first user of those assets. The laptop manufacturer and sent directly to you from the factory or from the distributor. Then you are the first user, owner and user. But it has already been used. Let's say you have a parent company outside India, and parent company has these laptops, and they have already used it for a year. And then now they want to transfer those laptops to India to your unit. Those are used laptops because it has already been put to use.
Is there a typo in the observation there? It says a percentage of employee transfer, or is it a percentage of capital goods transfer?
Which one?
First condition.
Sorry, that is the correct. It's a typo. That's a percentage of capital goods, not the employee transfer.
In the same, in addition to the same question, if I am taking the used laptop or machinery like capital goods from the same SEZ but from different unit, is that be considered as domestic or imported?
That will still be considered as imported. Within the zone, procured from within the
SEZ.
from SEZ. Yeah. Any other questions?
Is it that within the same SEZ, like, there are so many SEZs across India, right?
Irrespective, either within the same SEZ or even from a different SEZ. Both are covered. So moving on to some of the indirect tax benefits what we have on special economic zones. So as we told, with respect to the import of goods for authorized operations, again all these benefits would flow only for authorized operations because SEZ laws is also very clear saying that whatever import of goods or import of services an SEZ makes is towards or should be towards authorized operations. So there will be SEZ unit will be allowed to procure duty free.
How do I establish that the service or goods what has been imported is for authorized operation or is for authorized operation?
Sorry, how do you establish?
How do I establish whatever goods has been imported or services has been imported is for authorized operation?
So it's a very again it's a closely connected question what Madam asked. So it all depends on for what use are you putting those goods imported. Like for example, I would say audit services, statutory audit services for SEZ unit. Now, if you ask me how do you prove the nexus, one is it is a mandatory requirement under the Companies Act to have the statutory audit done. Now, if you ask me how do I prove the nexus, then I can always say that what if I don't get my books of accounts audited, then what are the ramifications under the Companies Act? The highest level of ramifications would be if the non-compliance continues eternally, then the last thing I would want to have is the name of the company being struck off. So effectively, if I don't have a form of organization to operate because of this non-compliance, then I forget about having an authorized operations. I can't even have board of the company near the SEZ unit. So proving the nexus is very subjective. We need to establish that how these services are relevant for operation of, or rather how these services or the goods are relevant for the export of the products or services. So it depends on case to case basis. There is no straitjacket formula for that.
So it is as you said, it's a subjective matter and it has to be demonstrated.
It has to be
And
demonstrated.
it is not like something which is available through records or any forms or any statutorily available.
Correct.
Any such thing which can prove that yes, any goods entering to an SEZ is for operations.
So that's why I referred to the circular inter-service tax regime, for proving the nexus, one of the criteria or the guideline given was in the absence of those services, whether at all the output product or output service is impacted. So some of these things which we can gather to put across a nexus. So as in case of imported goods, there will not be any custom duties, and import of service also can be procured without payment of IGST by SEZ unit. And domestic procurements of imports and capital goods for authorized operations could not be subjected to the goods and services tax. So if you look at this table, procurement by SEZ unit from domestic, it has interstate and intrastate. Don't go by those terms. I only put those terms to distinguish, saying that procurement from vendor within the state and procurement from a vendor outside the state, because as per IGST Act, every supply to an SEZ unit is a interstate supply. Okay. So intrastate mentioned here is only to distinguish between where the vendor is located. So irrespective of irrespective of the location of the vendor, the supplies to an SEZ unit will be zero rated, meaning thereby the vendor, though he will not charge IGST on supplies, he can still take the input tax rate on his procurements used for providing the goods or services to an SEZ unit. And if he has any other domestic output liability of GST, he can utilize such input credit. If not, then it can be claimed as a refund. Now when he goes for a refund for those IGST, there are again two options. One, either he can charge on the invoice of supply of goods or services which is supplied to the SEZ unit, and then that SEZ unit will go and get the endorsement from the SEZ officer saying that these services or goods are procured for their authorized operations, and the SEZ unit will not be claiming the refund of such IGST charge on that invoice. Based on that endorsed invoice, the SEZ unit will hand over that endorsed invoice to the supplier, and basis that he will claim a refund, or he may not charge and claim a refund of input credit. Then another variant of SEZ is FTWZ, which is Free Trade Warehousing Zone. It is also nothing but an SEZ itself, wherein the same permissions of opening the letter of approval, so on and so forth, has to be conducted. But it has a very restricted operations. It can only do a trading and warehousing activities within the zone. So procurement from one SEZ unit from another SEZ unit is also exempted or duty free. And then procurement by an SEZ unit from an STP unit or a EOU unit will also be zero rated, because the recipient here is SEZ. So once the recipient is SEZ, you will be hit by again section 16 of IGST Act, which says any supplies to SEZ unit is a zero rated supplies. So to answer your question, ma'am, on the transfer of STP to SEZ, so probably you will not be paying any duties at the time of transfer. Now, sale from a SEZ unit. So export, as we all know, it's a zero rated thing. Again, domestic, there are interstate and intrastate, only for distinction between where the customer of SEZ is located, whether within the state or not. Otherwise, every sale from SEZ is also an interstate sale. So when there is a sale from SEZ unit to a domestic customer, then DTA would pay the custom duties, because it is deemed to be an import for a domestic tariff area unit. Any procurements from a SEZ unit is deemed import for a DTA unit, and he has to pay the custom duties on such procurement of goods from the SEZ unit. And custom duty would entail the normal custom duties of BCD, social welfare surcharge, IGST, if any anti-dumping duties, so on and so forth available. Similarly, SEZ making sale to another SEZ or FTWZ, no duties or taxes are leviable. And then SEZ making a supply to STPI or EOU, no custom duties, or IGST is also exempt, because here the procurement is made by STPI. So its IGST would be exempt till March 2020. And in respect of supply of services from SEZ to STPI, IGST would be payable. However, STPI can claim a refund of those IGST. Now some of the recent updates with respect to the SEZ laws are, we were discussing on list of services used for authorized operations. So 66 services were notified, and recently another services has been included, which is management consultancy services. So if an SEZ unit procures management consultancy services, now there is no requirement to run around and get an approval from a USC, because it is also included in the default list. Then one more recent update is with respect to setting up of special facilities for units for exclusive use of such unit. So if a unit wants to set up, as we talked of processing and a non-processing area, so in a non-processing area, if the unit wants to set up a cafeteria, a creche or a gymnasium or any other similar facilities, then the unit has to get a prior approval from the development commissioner or a unit approval committee. But before going to a development commissioner or a unit approval committee, such unit has to get a no objection certificate from a developer, and from the relevant statutory authorities. It could be a fire, health and safety or pollution control department of the government, etc. And then the last update is, as I told you, the trusts are also now able to set up unit in a special economic zone, because trust is included in the definition of a person. That is, for chartered accountants, the moment we hear trust, we will start thinking about the various structuring opportunities, so on and so forth. So I leave that to you to evaluate.
So the cafeteria and gymnasium law that was operating within the SEZ, what do they do about the GST portion? Are they charging them or no?
Sorry.
So the cafeteria and the gymnasium setup is operating within the SEZ. How do they manage the GST? Are they supposed to charge GST to the SEZ units that they are servicing, or?
So currently, what I have seen is there have been mixed opinions. Few of them are charging, or rather most of them are charging, just to go conservative on that. Especially in the cafeteria, because they say that it's used for personal consumption and over related to authorized operations. Going by that logic, I think in my experience, I've seen most of the people are charging. And one more other key criteria is, you yourself are accepting that these are activities which are conducted in the non-processing area. So going by this, people are charging. So then some of the key questions, since we told there is a sunset clause of March 2020 for setting up of SEZ. So what benefits will be available if a unit moves into an SEZ after the sunset clause? That is, they start from post 1st April 2020 onwards. So probably as it stands today, unless it gets extended, if the commencement of operations, rather if the LOA is not obtained prior to that, then that the income tax benefits may not be available. However, indirect tax benefits would still continue, as in case of STPI today, where income tax benefits have exhausted in FY 2011, but indirect tax benefits still continue. So unless specific exemptions are provided, then there will not be any income tax benefit post the sunset clause. And can a tenant occupy an SEZ building and not avail any benefits? So effectively, a tenant or rather he has got an letter of approval, and then he has, let's say, he has commenced business operations also, and then can he still operate without any benefits? As we told, if he satisfies those conditions what we discussed, he will get the additional benefits. Otherwise, there is no bar on the operation as such, but the tax benefits would not be available. And whether movement of units from one SEZ to another SEZ, is it permissible? Sorry, before we continue, I think we have a question.
This tenant thing what you mentioned. So this tenant thing what you mentioned, that he is occupied SEZ, it is just waiting for the letter of approval. So once he gets that, so what benefit is that other than I understand SEZ benefits he is got? Is that what you are referring? I will be able to continue to.
So the income tax benefit, what we refer is the first year starts from the date of year of commencement of operations. So till such time, he can still be occupied as a tenant till he commences the business operations, and probably the first year of benefit of income tax will not start till then. Till such time he commences the business operations.
And one more thing, this may be specific to GST. This tenant who have the letter of approval, Okay, they have been told to charge IGST under RC mechanism for the rent what they pay.
Rent what they pay to the developer.
Government, yeah, developer.
Mhm.
So is one.
So renting of immovable property is one of the services which is already there in the authorized list of services, default list of services. So by virtue of that, you need not, rather you need not actually, you can actually tell the developer to not charge IGST on that. I'm actually surprised to.
No, we have to pay the RC amount.
No, absolutely not. Because even going by IGST Act, supply of services to SEZ unit is zero rated.
Right.
So once it is zero rated, how does it matter whether it is forward charge or RCM?
Yeah.
And on imported services, there is already an exemption notification saying that if SEZ unit imports services, then no requirement to pay IGST on reverse charge basis.
Yeah, I'll just establish the link. The RCM notification it says supply of service and paid to the government. The RCM notification which says about the services availed from the government. So is it the service which you are availing from the government, central government?
Irrespective, so I got your point. So one of the notified items for reverse charge basis is whenever the government notified services of the government is procured by any person, then the liability to pay GST will be on such person with respect to those government services. Now the question is, if such person who receives the service, if that person is a SEZ unit, then whether at all they have to pay GST and RCM or not. Correct?
Yes.
So again, I would go back to section 16 because that is very categorical, saying any and every service supplied to SEZ are zero rated. Whether such services or such services are notified under RCM or not, I think in my view the position would be not to pay GST on RCM. Because a notification cannot override a section.
The reason is following. When you say they've been told to pay, because it's clearly following this notification.
So probably one of the point to litigate, worth litigating is.
So worth litigating.
Worth litigating. Any other questions?
This instruction in 94-95.
Just, when were they notified or when was this really came out? This instruction in 94 litigation. The management consultants.
This was just 3 months back.
Oh, it's 3 months back.
3 months back.
Including the cafeteria.
Yes, both 94 and 95. Last 2 to 3 months this was.
And sorry to take it in. How do I see a benefit since it was not included till now? Okay. By including this, what is this? How can I see the benefit part of it? Because most of the ITES companies, when they cost charge, is like a management consulting service. So, what is the benefit by including this as part of the authorized operations? What is the benefit they are trying to give to these units who are outside SEZ?
So this is more from the input service. The management consultancy services, when it is notified as one of the list of default services which is required for the authorized operations. So it's on a procurement by the SEZ unit, not on the output service. Not on. I mean,
Yeah.
so coming to another question, whether movement of the units from one SEZ to another SEZ is permissible. So for whatever reasons, SEZ unit has taken a letter of approval in one particular special economic zone in a geographical area, and then they feel that due to the proximity to the port of any another special economic zone, they need to shift their unit to another special economic zone. So such movement is also permissible under the SEZ laws. And then the next question would be, can domestic businesses be conducted from a SEZ location? So we already talked about this point, saying that there is no restriction for a SEZ unit to supply goods or services to an Indian customer. If it is a supply of goods from a SEZ unit to Indian customer, then Indian customer, if they are a DTA unit, he would be filing the bill of entry and then paying the customs duties. and then getting the goods cleared from the SEZ unit. But if it is a supply of services from a SEZ unit to an Indian customer, then such services and the consideration for such services should be paid to the SEZ unit by the Indian customer in foreign exchange. These are the only criteria, and it's a permissible activity. And the next key question is, what would be the impact if the SEZ unit scales its operations over a period of time and there is a significant expansion in phases post April 1st, 2020. So this is where certain planning is required. I think we are fag end of exhausting the exemption by March 20. So it all depends on what projections and what are the actual operations which you need to carry on, because once you get the letter of approval and operations are commenced, then the first year of income tax exemption kicks in, and then any subsequent expansions you are still entitled for up to 15 years. Even if you start in 1920 financial year, the 15-year clock still takes in, wherein first 5-year block 100% of the profits is exempt, next 5 year 50%, the third block of 50% subject to investment in the special economic zone reinvestment reserves. So this is one of the planning opportunities. And the next question is, will the tax benefit be available if an existing DTA or STP unit moves lock, stock and barrel to an SEZ unit? As we told, if a unit moves, if the unit is established by virtue of reconstruction or splitting up, so on and so forth, the benefits would not be available. However, to the extent of 50, if they are able to qualify that 50% of technical manpower and 20% of the used capital goods, then subject to qualification of these conditions, even if it moves and then we are able to establish and increase and expand in that and invest in that new SEZ unit to this extent, benefits would still continue to be available. So new country entrants and what they should do. So I think as practitioners, this is a planning opportunity. Typically what we see is, whenever a foreign client approach saying that we want to set up business in India, then the traditional approach is give them a slide deck which says that these are the forms of organization, company, LLP, so on and so forth. Now one person company has also come, so on and so forth. So I think the time has come, we need to look beyond the forms of organizations, and then in addition to those forms, what we can probably advise to the clients are these value-added services as to the various forms in which a company or LLP can operate, which can enhance the tax benefits for such foreign clients wanting to set up businesses in India. And some of the key aspects, it could be a shortcoming or it could be a boon also to SEZ units. Well, let's discuss in this slide. One of the critical thing post introduction of GST, what I have observed is the ISD mechanism of routing the input tax rates under GST. Now let's say a company has 3 units. One unit in DTA, domestic tariff area, another unit in STPI, and the third unit in SEZ. And the DTA unit is a corporate office come head office come the main office which will receive or ISD office which will receive all the invoices for all the common input services availed for the entire company as a whole. And let's take a classic example of the management consultancy itself. Now that management consultancy is with respect to all 3 units. And if the invoice is 1 crore, having 18 crore or rather 18 lakhs as IGST amount on that. Now this 18 lakh amount can't be taken as a credit in the DTA unit. And let's assume that all 3 are having different GST registrations. STP separate, DTA separate, and SEZ by default it has to be a separate one. Now this DTA unit will take that 18 lakh or will ask the management consultant to raise an invoice on his ISD registration number under GST, and then now they have to distribute. Now how will I distribute? Because IGST Act says that supplies to SEZ unit are 0 rated. Right? So to the extent of DTA unit, turnover of the DTA unit, to the extent of turnover of the STP unit, I would distribute. Since the law is silent on the distribution with respect to SEZ unit, this is one grey area where a representation can go, and then this can be sorted to just ease the operations for SEZ unit. Otherwise, what would happen, even to the proportionate rate of out of 18 lakhs has to be distributed to SEZ unit, and then they should apply for a refund. Which, if they had procured directly, the management consultant would never have charged them IGST, because that is one of the authorized list of operations. This is one grey area. And then second one is with respect to the removal of inputs and capital goods to DTA and the requirement of surrendering the deemed export benefit. Now typically while procurement of the goods are duty free, but at the time of removal, let's say these assets an SEZ unit had procured from a domestic vendor, and domestic vendor would not have charged GST, or if it is procured prior to GST, he would not have charged excise duty or VAT. He would have charged and claimed refund in some states, and some state it was an upfront exemption. Now wherever he has not charged any taxes or duties, now after 5 years, now in GST regime, the goods would have to be removed for whatever purpose. They want to transfer it to their DTA unit, or they want to sell it off to a third party customer. Then in that case, when it comes to the removal of inputs, then effectively what happens is, or rather inputs or capital goods, the officers are insisting, saying that you need to also ensure that the deemed export benefits availed by the supplier at the time of initial supply to the SEZ unit has to be reversed. If he has claimed a drawback on supplies made to SEZ unit, then he needs to reverse the drawback, because the supplier would have claimed this deemed export benefit. Now accordingly, it becomes all the more imperative for SEZ unit that at the time of procurement, take a declaration from the supplier if he is claiming all these benefits or not, because it would help them to justify, saying that if he has not claimed any deemed export benefits, then the time of removal it will be smoother for removal of the goods on payment of duty, rather than the officer not giving permission because this is not proved, otherwise saying that the supplier has not availed the deemed export benefits. That is one. Second thing, upon removal of the capital goods, if you have procured the capital goods duty free and you have used it for 3 years, then there have been depreciation rates specified in the SEZ law, saying that the value on which custom duties are to be paid are at the depreciated value. So it need not be the purchase value minus for the number of years of use, depreciation benefit is available. The rate has been given under the SEZ law. And then post 5 years for all ITS goods, computer, laptops, 100% depreciation is available. So all the goods removed post 5 years would effectively entail zero payment of custom duties. So we already discussed on the topic of approved list of services vis-a-vis zero rated supplies, wherein at least in my view you can still take that position, saying that since IGST Act is very clear, saying that all supplies made to SEZ unit are zero rated, so no requirement of charging IGST irrespective of authorized operations or not, but highly litigated and fact specific, so be very careful about that. Then one more critical aspect of the FTWZ model, aspect with respect to special economic zone, is the FTWZ model, the free trade warehousing zone model. So effectively what happens, we are well aware of intermediary under GST. Lot of issues around saying that because if a person qualifies to be an intermediary for GST purpose, then the place of supply will be the place of service provider, even though the customer is outside India and he receives money in foreign exchange. But if he qualifies to be an intermediary, which effectively means a broker or an agent or any other person by whatever name called, who arranges or facilitates the supply of goods or services, or both, or securities between two or more persons, but does not include a person who supplies such goods or services or both, or securities on his own account. So if the supplier, especially in a SEZ unit, or if he's in a DTA unit, if he is doing a marketing activity for his parent, for his foreign parent, then there is a question mark whether or not this qualifies to be an intermediary. And if going by the facts, if he qualifies as an intermediary, then even though he is raising an invoice on the foreign supplier, foreign parent, and collecting money in foreign exchange, since he is an intermediary, the place of provision of supply would be the place of service provider in India. Accordingly, he will be levying IGST and collect. So it's a 18% would be a cost in this supply chain. So one another model which we could think of here is, can these transactions be done from a FTWZ, wherein this domestic supplier, instead of doing only marketing activity, will do an extended activity of supplying the goods also. And then he will establish in a FTWZ unit, he would import and he would keep those goods till the time the customer he receives an order from the customer within India. So then the character of the transaction will move out from the services store, he will become a trader. At the same time, he will get the benefit of deferring the payment of customs duties also. Because till the time you clear the goods from FTWC, you will not pay any customs duties. And one more critical area to watch out for is super manufacturing zone. This term was coined in the recently declared budget by our Honorable Finance Minister, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, wherein to boost the export sector, similar to SEZ, they are thinking about establishing super manufacturing zone by extending the direct tax and indirect tax benefits. So this is one key area to watch out for. And some of the specific instructions with respect to the SEZ unit are: removal of the goods for testing, replacement, repairs, R&D are permissible on self-attestation basis under intimation to a specified officer. So SEZ unit, if they want to remove the goods temporarily for all these activities, it is a permitted thing without any specific approval. And then monitoring of the amount of bond come letter of undertaking is the responsibility of the unit. So as I told, up to 3 months they need to value of imports for up to 3 months. They need to submit a BLUT, but they can, if they are facing difficulty of monitoring, then they can as well furnish for 3 years or 5 years. Then any business is not free from any contingencies, especially IT sector, wherein there could be downtimes, there could be data crashes due to computer malware, so on and so forth. So there is a requirement to establish a DRC, Disaster Recovery Center, or a Business Continuity Plan Centers, and these could be outside SEZ also. So, and these are very normal for any SEZ unit or any other IT/ITES industry. So establishing DRC or BCP outside a SEZ or within another SEZ is also permitted with prior approval, because there is a movement of the data of the SEZ unit to another SEZ unit or to a DTI unit where this DCP is located. Accordingly, a prior approval from the Development Commission would be required for establishing DRC. And third party DRC BCP center is also permitted to be set up in a SEZ unit. Now, if I want to set up a unit in a SEZ and the authorized operations is only providing a BCP or a DRC operations to a foreign company, that is also permitted. Indian company is also permitted, provided I receive consideration in foreign exchange. And some of the compliance requirements for SEZ are, they need to furnish a monthly performance reports, typically whatever proposed number of employees vis-a-vis actual number of employees, the total value of exports made during the month, and then there is service export reporting form which is recently introduced in last 6 months or so. This would entail as IT/ITES unit mentioning the services as per the service accounting codes used for GST purposes. So this is sort of, the government wants to align the practices. They can't have a description of services or a SAC code different mentioning the GST invoice vis-a-vis this invoice what they are exporting. So to align all this, SERF requires the SAC codes which are used for GST purposes. And second thing, since if the SEC unit is entitled to claim a SEIS benefit, then it would help them in claiming that without any technical glitches if the SEC code is aligned with SERF format. Then consolidation of monthly performance report would be their annual performance report, which has to be furnished by within 90 days from the end of the financial year. And there is a requirement of submitting soft text forms also for IT/ITES sector. So these are some of the benefits and compliance requirements for SEC unit. And then let us talk about STP units briefly, because the major charm of the STP unit is lost after financial year 2011, where the income tax benefits have been exhausted. So just to touch base upon, so that even the indirect tax benefits do continue. So to touch base upon those things, STP unit, unlike SEC units, are regulated under Chapter 6 of Foreign Trade Policy 15 to 20 and governed by Notification 15 to 2003, 52 of 2003 Customs. And the regulation authority are Software Technology Parks of India under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So as we discussed that only the indirect tax benefits continue as of today for STP units. And let us see the procurement by STP unit. So if STP unit or a EO unit procures or imports, then import of goods, there is no custom duty and IGST is exempt up to March 2020. If you recall, with the introduction of GST law from July 2017, initial 3 months there was no exemption from GST for the STP units. They actually used to pay GST, which increased their working capital, and it was a burden for them. So then later on, government have been extending the exemption in a staggered manner. The last exemption is what they have told is up to 2020 for IGST on imports. And any import of services by a STP unit, IGST is payable on reverse charge basis, but subsequently it can be claimed as a refund if they are doing an export activity. And then procurement of services or goods by STP unit domestically, interstate or intrastate, for an export for the goods manufactured within India, supply by a domestic vendor to STP unit would be considered as deemed export, and then refund claim of GST paid by EOU or a DTA unit is permissible, and any services from a DTA unit to a STP unit, IGST or a local GST is leviable. Then, when goods are procured by STP unit from a SEZ or a FTWG unit, custom duty would again be exempt because of 52 of 2003 customs notification, which treats any imports, and procurement from SEZ is also on par with the imports. Accordingly, there will not be any levy of custom duty. And then with respect to procurement of services, IGST would be payable, which again can be claimed as a credit and refund subsequently. These are procurements. With respect to the goods manufactured in India and supplied to STP unit, the government have notified that these are the category which is deemed to be export under the GST law. Accordingly, there will be no levy of GST on the supply. And on sale from STP units, if it is an export, we all know that it is zero rated, and with respect to domestic services, if it is interstate, then IGST is payable, and intrastate, CGST, SGST is payable. And then supply from STP unit to SEZ unit, here the recipient unit is a SEZ unit, which again is a zero rated supply, and services would also be zero rated. And STP to STP unit. So goods, supply of goods from one STP unit to another STP unit would be a deemed export, and refund claim of GST paid by the supplier or receiver of services would be eligible. And then any services from STP to another STP unit would entail payment of IGST. And one major relief, since the income tax benefits were exhausted, and there was a lot of regulations also with respect to STP units. So in 2016, government came up with amending certain regulations with respect to STP units, wherein it was deemed that the STP units would no longer be treated as a bonded warehouses, as for the purpose of Customs Act. So what it entails is the movement of the goods from the STP unit, the regulations and the permissions required have substantially reduced after removing them from the bonded warehouse as per the Customs Act. And certain impact of these notifications are, one was, it was as part of Make in India initiative and ease of doing the business, and then units stand de-licensed as a warehouse, by virtue of which they were free to operate with respect to the movement of the goods, though procurement certificate was a requirement, but the re-warehousing certificates were done away with. And then prior to this, the units were supposed to maintain the records in a bond register. That was done away with because they were no longer a bonded warehouse. Instead of that, a digital copy of Form A containing the transactions for the month was required to be provided to the proper officer by 10th of the next month in a CD or a pen drive. Only requirement was any modifications in this Form A, they need to have an audit trail. So you can't erase an entry and then replace an entry after iteration of Form A. If you want to delete an entry, there should be a trial of that deletion and the purpose of deletion, and the new entry should be after that. So that is one key requirement which had come up. So then, as I told, with the introduction of these notifications, delicensing of the STP units, the requirement of sending re-warehousing certificates has been dispensed with. So earlier what used to happen prior to these notifications, for every movement of the goods, the unit has to obtain a procurement certificate, and then once the goods reaches that intended recipient, then the recipient has to issue a reversing certificate. That reversing certificate has to be submitted to the jurisdictional officer. Only then the entire transaction would have been completed and no duty was demanded. Now with the introduction of other delicensing and then making them not a bonded warehouse, the requirement of reversing certificate has been done away with. The unit will obtain a procurement certificate, they will import the goods, and then once the goods are into their premises, the jurisdiction officer will contact the customs department asking for the procurement certificate. Once those two matches, then there is no separate ask for a reversing certificate from the STPI. And there were a lot of inter-unit transfers between one STP unit to another STP unit. So all bond-to-bond transfer procedure have been dispersed with, and the procurements now has to be supported by only by the procurement certificate. And supply of goods from one unit to another shall be based upon usual commercial documents as invoice and delivery challenge. And upon receipt of the goods, copies of the document shall be provided to the jurisdictional officer of sending and receiving unit by way of an intimation. And the compliance requirement with respect to STP units are, instead of NPR what we saw in SEZ, here they are quarterly performance reports, and then there is annual performance report and soft text and Form A, which I told, which is effectively the record of the inward and outward movement of the goods. And then with respect to IUT's inter-unit transfer, if the movement is between STP unit and to an STP unit, category is intrastate, no GST applicable. And STP to STP interstate, IGST applicable. STP unit to SEZ unit intrastate, though it is intrastate, which is mentioned in the slide, but it's only for identification of the vendor location. But effectively wherever SEZ comes, it is always interstate. Then GST will be 0 rated, STP and SEZ unit 0 rated, and SEZ unit sending goods to another SEZ unit 0 rated. SEZ to SEZ is again 0 rated, be it services or goods. SEZ to STP unit and SEZ to STP unit, it will again be duty free because of deemed import benefit under as prescribed under notification 52 of 2003. So with this I conclude my presentation and then open for any questions from here on.
Hello. So, first question is, when I am procuring from an STP unit, how do I know? Because from the I can get to know from the GST letter from where I am procuring is an SEZ unit, that I can get to know. But from the same sense, how do I get to know it's an STP unit?
So how do you negotiate your prices with the vendor? The first point is, if at all I am a SEZ unit or STP unit, by default I should not pay any taxes on procurement unless the regulations otherwise provide for. Now if I am procuring from a STP unit and I am a SEZ unit, then it is in my prerogative to inquire at the time of closing out the PO itself, saying that the agreed price is this, so and so, and there should not be any taxes levied, because the vendor will also give his pro forma invoice before you finalize the PO. So if he levies any taxes, then at that point in time itself you could intimate that you are an SEZ unit. There should not be any levy of IGST because of the provisions of IGST law. So at the time of negotiation of the price, these things has to be concluded. It's a matter of commercial negotiation.
Second question. When an STP unit is procuring from a DTA, say goods or services, it is considered as a normal regular transaction?
So SEZ unit procuring either
STP.
STP units procuring goods or services from a domestic vendor. So if the goods are manufactured in India, the goods whatever is proposed to be procured by STP unit, and these are manufactured goods, then it is treated as deemed export for GST purposes. And if these are traded goods, then the benefit of exemption from GST is not available. He will charge, probably the STP unit then has to claim a refund. And if it is capital goods, there is no question of claiming a refund unless you have a domestic liability, you have to utilize that credit. Now procurement of services from a DTA to STP unit is again subjected to GST. There is no specific exemption. So STP unit would procure the services on payment of GST, take the credit and claim the refund.
Yes, I have.
You can.
Yeah, my question was, despite the several tax benefits that you elaborated, why is it that the SEZs are not so sought after? Like I know lots of companies like Goldman Sachs, Fidelity, even small companies who are captives of their US parents, they don't opt for an SEZ. What could be the reason? Is it because of the compliance burden, or is it because of awareness?
So I don't think so. It is lack of awareness, definitely not. And compliance as such, it's not a burden once the rules are set and there's clarity on the operations, and the law has evolved so much that most of the aspects, if not 100%, at least 99% of the operational hazards have already been addressed by way of instructions. So I don't think so it's lack of awareness. There could be various business reasons. Probably they may have explored various other options under the foreign trade policy for procuring duty-free goods or services. That could be one. And second thing could be they already have invested significantly outside SEZ. Now commercially, now they want to just first have achieved the break-even of those investments, and then because there is a restriction of movement of assets, lock, stock, barrel from a non-SEZ to an SEZ. So these are probable factors which I could think of which could have restricted from not going into an SEZ.
And for companies which are doing export, like captives who are just providing services to the parents or even otherwise, they are neither SEZ nor STPI. Are they still supposed to file a soft tax form?
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
If you are not registered with STPI, but you still have to file the soft tax form for exporting.
Very good question. So in fact, this I would say lack of awareness among most of the IT ITS sectors, because even though they are not a STP unit, not a SEZ unit, but providing services of information technology or information technology enabled services, being a DTA unit, they are required to register with STP authorities as a non-STP, and then they have to file the soft tax forms. And soft tax forms are to be filed within 30 days of the last invoice raised in a particular month. It's not 30 days from the end of the month. If I raise an invoice on 25th of March, then by 25th of April I need to file my soft tax forms. So even a DTA unit has to register with STP authorities as non-STP unit and then undertake this compliance of filing soft tax.
So I know a lot of people have not done it. Other means
They are not.
consequences, penalties.
So this is a violation because soft tax is a requirement under FEMA. So it's a FEMA violation. So probably they may have to apply for compounding for the past periods wherever they are not applied for.
Sir, I have 3 questions.
Have I answered your question, sir?
Yeah.
It's regarding income tax benefit for the unit. You have told that if it is a reconstruction of the company or splitting up the business, so then the income tax benefit is not available. Example, already an existing STPI unit is there, shifting to SEZ unit. So will that is that necessary to be in a business in carry out the business in STPI unit even after moving to SEZ unit?
Not necessary.
Not necessary.
Not necessary.
Okay. And the next question is, so you have told that after 5 years of that asset, we can remove it from the SEZ without payment of duty. Example, an asset is being bought somewhere in 2015, say. So and that is being moved to SEZ unit. So we will be taking out the asset in the year 2021. So is it necessary to pay the duty and take out? Because the SEZ unit is example has set up somewhere in 18 or 19. So the SEZ unit has not completed 5 years. But that asset is already more than 5 years old. So is it necessary to pay the duty and remove the asset?
So when you procure the used goods, the value of procurement itself is a depreciated value.
Yeah.
First place.
Yeah.
Now, the depreciation as per the SEZ law provides for depreciation of the used assets from the date of its being put to use in the SEZ.
Oh, okay, yeah. So then we have to pay the duty and remove the goods.
Correct.
When we take out in the year 2020.
Correct.
Okay. And sir, and then one more last question. SEZ unit, they are providing services to STP unit. So you have said that it's a deemed export and we don't have to charge IGST.
Not for services. So here, STP unit is the recipient of service. In your example.
Yeah.
Okay. So SEZ unit is providing services to STP unit.
Yeah.
In this scenario, GST will be applicable. But STC, as per the definition of service as per the SEZ Act, one of the conditions is to be receiving the consideration in foreign exchange. So here STP unit has to pay the consideration in foreign exchange for SEZ unit.
If it is not charging GST.
Irrespective.
Okay. If it is
So
an INR,
consideration is dealing from the aspect of GST.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Because if you don't pay in foreign exchange to the SEZ unit is violating the SEZ regulations of not earning the amount in foreign exchange. Okay, so they would want you to pay them in foreign exchange. And for that, RBI has issued a circular permitting non-SEZ units to go approach the AD banker, get their INR exchange for foreign currency for the purpose of making the payment to SEZ units.
Sir, and DTA unit providing like software as a goods and software as a service, both as a service, export. Does Softec forms is required only for this software which has been selling as a goods, or even for the software which has been selling as a service?
So it's only for the services.
So if I build a software, I give them a link and he downloads, so it's as a good, not as a subscription model or not like a SaaS model. In both the cases it is required?
So this commercial understanding of software as goods or services, another is legal understanding. Okay, though technically product and service SaaS is only defined if you are selling that software as such.
Yes.
Or you are licensing that software. That is the critical definition commercially between a software being classified as goods or service. But in my view, both will still qualify for the purpose of filing the soft text.
But when you look at the software forms, it mentions that software as a goods, you have to mention the form.
Correct.
If it is you are selling the software as a service, it is not required, because it asks the details that the form is asking you. If you are providing software as a service, it's difficult to view those information.
So for legal purpose, at least to put it very simple, though it is very litigated, but at least now there is sort of understanding saying that if it is on tangible media, then it is goods.
Yeah.
If it is electronically delivered, be it you deliver as a product or be it you deliver as a license, it is still
Product.
it is service, not tangible media. Okay. So to that extent, in both the forms, you are required to file soft text in my view.
Hi sir. Satish. I'm moving on from STPI to SEZ. So I'll be deboning the assets and I have to pay IGST and BCD and CVD.
You are an STP.
I'm STPI as of now. I'm going to be a non-STPI unit and opting SEISP. So while moving on from STPI, I have to pay back the IGST and CVD and stuff. Right? So that IGST can I claim as input?
So, clearance of inputs and clearance of capital goods from the existing STP, two categories.
Correct.
While you clear the inputs, you are required to reverse the credit availed on inputs at the time of procurement. While you clear the capital goods, the value of the capital goods minus the depreciation as made available as per the foreign trade policy for STPA, on that you have to pay custom duties.
Yeah.
So when you pay custom duties, a part of custom duties also IGST on those capital goods. That being a DTA unit, though effectively the invoice will be on DTA unit.
Yes.
They will be paying the custom duties. So in my view, credit should be available.
So both IGST and CVD
Should be available. CVD, there is no CVD now. BCD, IGST and social welfare surcharge. BCD and social welfare surcharge, there is no question of claiming the credit. Only IGST portion you can claim the credit.
For non-STP unit, Can they claim SEIS benefit?
Non-STP unit can claim. So SEZ unit and non-STP unit can claim. STPI unit cannot claim because they have been specifically put under the negative list.
They are not eligible.
They are not eligible to claim the benefits.
So I can continue to be take as a non-STP unit and still go ahead with SEIS.
SEIS, provided your services are notified and you are eligible.
Yeah.
So on and so forth.
Thank you.
So good then, I think SEZ laws have been evolving over a period of time, and there are a lot of operational issues with respect to the movement of the roads. That somehow, I was discussing with one of my friends on the evolvement of SEZ laws. So he incidentally quoted Sarvagna's quote, which said that Kelavam Ballavarinda Kaltu, Kelavam Madpavarannu Kandu, Mattu Halavam Tane Swataha Madidili Sarvagna, which means few we have to learn from someone who is doing, few we have to learn from someone who is actually knowing what to do, and many we have to actually do by ourselves and learn. So as a practitioner, we have seen these things happening with respect to SEZ law, where we have actually tried and tested many of the provisions and then taken views, and then later on got the clarifications also. So this is something, on this note I would want to thank you all for your patience with me.
Thank you, sir. It was a very good presentation and very nice, inspiring at the end of it. Thank you for patiently answering each of the questions raised by the audience. It's a time for us to give a gratitude to our today's speaker. So on behalf of Bangalore branch, let's give him present him a memento. Please give a big round of applause. There is one more announcement we made. There is a seminar happening tomorrow morning here in the institute called Pramar Pravachan. It's a breakfast meet. Breakfast is arranged at 7:30 and 8 to 10 is the timing, and the topic is actually on REVA audit by CA Vineti. For 2 hours it is there. For delegate fees is 300 rupees. You can register online, the registration is open, or you can come tomorrow morning and also do the spot registration.